Capital Improvement Program Committee, which works hard all summer to look at the capital needs and plan for Goffstown to present to the Select Board, the School Board, and the Budget Committee. As we've talked in the past, we're not any of those. We're just looking at capital needs and the way that they could be scheduled, managed to meet the capital needs. Whether the town decides in fact to do that in the end is up to the infinite wisdom of the voters, not us. We're just looking at the needs. Somebody very short sat in this chair before I did. Okay, so tonight we're going to have probably the most exciting presentations that we have all season, with the cast of characters in the back of the room, and we can usually leverage some rides on police vehicles and fire vehicles and new playground equipment if we use our leverage well. But first, let's go around and introduce ourselves. We'll start.
Tim Searles, community member at large.
Davis Allen, community at large member.
Dan McInnes, here from the school board.
I'm Jim Raymond. I'm acting chair until Tim shows up.
Richard Manzo, Select Board Rep.
Olivia Welcher, Budget Committee Rep.
And Derek Horn, Town Administrator, serving as staff liaison tonight.
Okay, thank you all. Does anybody have any questions on anything that we've done to date that has been waking you up at 2 in the morning? Good. We have before us the minutes of the last meeting. Have you had a chance to read them? And I won't ask if you actually did, but whether you had a chance to. Seeing that, will you?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
Richard,
of June 18th,
Olivia, will you
2026.
second that motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are accepted. Let's then jump into the presentations. Okay, I assume you guys have been sitting back there and you've decided who's going to go first. But if not, I'll take the one who's dressed in the least formal clothing so we can get him out of here and not embarrass us.
What do you mean? Look at these shorts. This is what you do when it comes to, when you turn the pool on, right?
That's right.
You wear these every day because you spill chlorine.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to have
20
you,
years I figured that out.
after you're done telling us about your clothing, I'm going to have each of you introduce yourself when you come up. Give us a quick overview of what you're going to do, and then we can go through in a little more detail. So, because we're a little slow on the uptake sometimes, you have to remind us what we're going to see before we see it. So, go ahead.
Rick Wilhelmy, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Before you do that, we have a new matrix. Is this just school?
It's just school.
Okay, so we don't need to look at that tonight. So we're going to still work with the matrix that we have in our notebooks.
And we do have some corrections that were noted at the first meeting. We're waiting to see all town departments go through and make all the corrections at once.
Okay, Rick, I'm sorry to introduce you.
No, that's fine, absolutely. I really don't know where you want to go, but I know in the past you just were kind of more or less worried about the upcoming year, which would be 2027.
But if you have some events beyond that that we need to be looking at, we want to hear about it because that's in our planning.
Yeah. What I'll be glad to do is I'll start with that 2027 and then kind of go into a little deeper dive from there. First, actually, I'll start out with
Wait, Derek, tell us what page we're looking
Jim
at.
killing me.
I am. We're just giving you a chance to get your breath.
Just getting rolling, eh?
Yeah.
Give me a second to find it electronically. I don't.
Looks like it's page 4.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I have no idea what you're looking at for pages or anything.
No, that's okay. That's why I wasn't asking you.
So I'll just kind of talk, and I don't know,
Yep.
you might have to find where I am.
Well,
I guess.
I would do
don't know.
that in advance.
But
Go ahead.
first, I'd like to start out and just kind of explain where the commissioners, the Park and Recreation Commissioners are coming from. I think the reality is reality, okay? And you aren't going to see any taxation dollars applied to any of these for a few years out. So what the commissioners are looking to do is using what we have as far as revolving fund monies, which are funds that come in from the different programs and everything that we use and all that stuff. Using revolving fund monies and using impact fee monies where applicable. Impact fees have strings, so you have to have something new, something that is actually, population is increasing, causing a demand, so then you can use the impact fees. So those will be the two main vehicles, and I think what the group, the commissioners were looking at, it's not a lot of money in those funds. You know, you might collect maybe $95,000 annually through that revolving fund. We currently have probably around 400,000 in there, due to, we've had 3 years in a row, if you remember, all rejections at the ballot, as far as your pool, as far as the tennis courts, these kinds of things. So those monies were all allocated to be used. They were not used, so now we're using these monies. And to clear it up for everybody out there, all you Facebook people, we are not using any taxation dollars to build the pickleball courts. It's all being used through impact fee money and through the revolving fund money. So please understand that. Good? Okay. So going forward, I think that's where the commissioners are looking, is okay, what does it need? What needs to be done? And how can we do it via these funds and make it work this way so we're not putting a burden on the taxpayer? So 2027, we are looking at trying to redo the Glen Lake waterfront area. I don't know if you use it or not, but it's a mess. It's destroyed. I mean, it's got a lot of washouts. It's kind of hazardous, to be honest with you. So right now we are working, we're getting ready to hire a landscape architect who's going to help us kind of give us a bigger picture of different options of what we can do for that area. And then that'll give us a better way to determine how much would that project actually cost, that kind of thing. Right now, we have a $50,000 placeholder for 2027 for this said project. Then again, we have to remember, we're going to use the revolving fund monies, hopefully. I mean, if it's over 300,000, we're not doing it next year. We got to wait, okay, that kind of thing. So we're working on that right now. And that's kind of going to be I think the mantra of how we go forward at these different tasks.
Rick, can you remind us quickly the source of funds in the revolving fund?
I was saying the monies come from programs that we run, so monies that come in.
The program fees.
That's
Rental fees.
And what does that come up to about a year?
I was
annually?
95,000
Okay.
annually.
Okay.
So you said there's about 400,000 in it now?
Right
give
now.
or take.
But you're gonna take out 100, about 190 of it for the pickleball courts.
Okay.
I have two other questions. Is there any time limit on when those funds have to be expended?
Revolving fund, no.
No.
Okay, what about on the
Impact fees, yes.
Are we on our time limit on getting those
Yes.
out the door?
6 years, but any ones that are close to expiring are going towards the pickleball, a portion of the pickleball courts.
And we're using a total of $130,000 of impact fee money for that pickleball project.
Do any of you have any questions? We talked about these a little in our initial meeting on those funds, but you all took good notes, I take it. Okay. Good. I'm sorry.
Hold on, I had a question about the waterfront. I know it's come up in the past about it being inaccessible for people with mobility issues. Will that be something that the architect would be able
I
to?
think when you do anything new and you renovate, you have to include handicap accessibility. It's like the pool,
Absolutely,
all right?
yeah.
The pool, 1979, it's built. As soon as you touch it, now you got to make everything handicap accessible. Right now, nothing's handicap accessible.
Right, okay, thank you.
You're on roll. Keep going, even though I try to interrupt you.
No, that's cool. So I think that's what is going to happen for 2027. Now, we have other projects that are definitely in the queue, but they're probably going to require they're gonna require some money. So in other words, in '28, we would like to look at doing the phase 2 of the sports complex, which is adding 2 rectangular fields. That's about $1 million. We're certainly not gonna get that from $95,000 a year annually. You're gonna have to go a pretty long time. So that's in, we're looking at for a dartboard, put it in '28. And we know it's probably not gonna happen, but you gotta put it somewhere, okay, that kind of thing. My fear in our community right now is I'm not sure, I don't know if I'm not sure what's gonna happen with Lions Complex, Lions Field Complex. I mean, I can't really speak to it, but it may remain, it may go away, all right? But there's 500 kids playing soccer that use that field. So if that ever does go away, I'm not saying it's going away, I'm saying I have no idea. And these are the times in these meetings and this thing you have to kind of plan for and think about.
And the town doesn't own those?
Oh, God, no, it's privately owned by the Lions Club. Yes. So that's a parcel that, you know, if they sell, they say, oh yeah, we could go to the sports complex. Yes, you could, but you gotta build it first. So it's not something that you can just go, hey, we're going over here. You know what I mean? So, the sports complex, we have that for '28. Then in '29, we're gonna bring back the tennis courts at Barnard Park. Remember, we had that in and that failed. So what we did is we did a lipstick on a pig. I'm sorry, that's the only phrase that comes to my head. We kind of put right way crack repair and fix the cracks. That isn't gonna last long, I'll tell you that right now. So I think the next phase there is you're gonna have to rip them up and redo those again. So that's about a $700,000 job right there. And then we have the whole pool thing. I mean, the pool thing, we've kicked that all around. I mean, what do you do with the pool? That's an elephant. So you're looking at $3-4 million for that. I don't know. It's in the cloud. It's in the computer cloud. You know, is that out in 2032, 33 if we can get there? You know, that kind of thing.
What you have in the field house recreation, tell us about that. Tell us about that.
Oh, and then something that we put out like in 2032, 33, somewhere around there, would be the last phase of the sports complex, which would actually, I think, help the town a lot. You all don't want to hear it, but a 32,000 square foot facility where you have 3 indoor basketball courts. Winter's another tough time for this community, very tough time. Everybody's using the schools everywhere, and it gets pretty crazy. So you'd have that court, those courts. That would also be, I'll put a plug for this one, you know, we got voting issues. Wouldn't that be a great place? We could have a centralized voting right there in the center, right by the transfer station, and that becomes a central voting station. In that facility, you would also put in like a community room, little kitchenette for our seniors and things like that, some office space.
Does that have a higher priority than the swimming pool? You don't show the swimming pool, you do show that.
I don't know what has a higher priority. I think, unfortunately, it kind of comes to money a little bit. If I was to put, I think the pool is probably more important than that. However, what would get more bang for its dollar, more usage, that community center would absolutely, hands down, provide more services than a 10-week season pool. So I think if I look at it in that fashion, when you ask me it that way, I would say the community center would probably be a higher value for the community.
You've talked in prior years of the Band-Aids on the swimming pool.
Oh, yeah.
How much longer can you Band-Aid it before we?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I'll tell you, I wake up in the morning, I go in, check it out. It's not running, hit start, it runs, excellent. Rock and roll, brother. Here we go. Another day.
Some questions you're not going to answer, I tell you.
I don't know how to answer it.
Okay, no,
I
that's-
don't know how to answer it. I mean, we, you know, you keep the mechanical side of it going, you know, your filtration side of it, keep that going. I think, you know, knock on wood, we've been pretty fortunate as far as your lines, your return lines, suction lines, things like that. We've gone, oh, probably a good 5 years now. We got a good company that does our winterization. I trust them a lot. And we haven't had any issues with cracks or breaks. There is a slight leak. I mean, that thing leaks, you gotta fill it maybe every 3 days. You gotta throw a hose in the water, let it run for 12 hours, and then you're good. But, you know, we did those liners back in what, 2013? 2012, 2013? Yeah, you know.
That was supposed to be, what, 10 years?
15. We're at the 15 and going over. But, you know, that helps, you know, things like that. My biggest fear, like what happened over at Roy, what happened to Roy is the main drain system corroded and failed. So that kind of repair, don't even go near it. I mean, you gotta dig, you gotta do a lot of work. And we have 2 main drains in the Barnard pool because it's a bigger pool. But you just keep going, Jim. I mean, I don't have an answer. I mean, when we proposed to build that pool 2-3 years ago, that you needed it, you know?
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Rick? He's very energetic, so we should take advantage of him.
Looking at the tennis courts, I'm seeing that there's an intention of a school match on meeting that cost. How does that play out?
It's a good question. It's, I'm assuming, and I assume pretty well, I think it would happen. You know, we'd sit down with the school and say, you know, can you help out with that? And maybe their rationale is, okay, well, we use it for our tennis season, so that's, I mean, I'm sure somebody's into the mathematical world over there, and they're gonna say, well, that's this percentage, so we'll give you this percentage for putting it in, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So I think that's how it would work. You know, it's the same thing with the track, okay, the track, I don't have that anywhere in here, all right? I think the school might have the track in there, I don't know. But there's another elephant in the room. Because right now, the track is already getting worn. Okay, we redid it, but it's already getting worn. You know, we did that, I think, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And that's getting worn. So that's another project.
Yeah, the school has that in their matrix.
They do?
Yes, in 2028.
2028?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Rick? Short presentation. Thank you.
All set?
No, I think we're all set. Thank you. Do you want to make impassioned closing statement? You don't have to.
No, I'm all set, Jim. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
No.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm taking by the person who stood up that he's decided he's going to go next.
So police is on page 1.
Good evening, everyone.
All set?
Yeah.
Let me introduce myself, Chief Eric Serino, Goffstown Police Department.
Normally, we say at the beginning, what are you going to offer us? But so,
Well, I feel like year after year, I offer you whatever you want, and sometimes we just don't connect at the end there, so. We do taser rides, we do cruiser rides.
okay, I just want everyone to be thinking about that as we go through
We
the
could do,
presentation.
Taser ride sounds like a threat.
we could, well, I guess that's right. We could do an hour at the range on your dime. Here we are. Actually, I gotta log back in, but I don't know how you want to start it. If you want me to start from the beginning, you have any questions to start off with, or?
No, why don't you lead us through? You can do vehicles first if you want, but, because that's a good warm-up for us.
Sure, so if I can, actually, can I go off script for a minute? I'd like to share with the committee some of the, I guess we could say, wins for the community. In the past, I've had a couple of things on CIP that were outdated or pushed out, and we've since solved those issues and taken them off of CIP, saving the taxpayer some money.
By
So-
other funding sources?
Well, one of them was the parking lot in the back, the extension there, which we had initially about $150,000 that was gonna have to get done, but Adam's team graciously came over in the winter and dug it all up and fixed it for us. I like to tell everybody when they ask me what we're building, it was my grave site that I was gonna haunt the rest of the PD for the rest of my life, but no, they came over in the winter they had some spare time, dug it all up and fixed our parking lot for us at a very minimal cost to the community. So that was one that we took off of CIP. And one big one that I had on there was our new records management system and CAD system for our entire, police services records management system, that we had quotes anywhere from $750,000 upwards to $1 million. We were able to start to look at a county-wide consortium with a software vendor that is the one that we have now. It's their parent company. Obviously, ours is so outdated and getting to the point that it's going to be end of life. As we're in CIP, looking to get a new software. The parent company has multiple agencies around the state. Everybody in Hillsborough County, for the most part, we're in the same boat of we all need a new software. So they were able to work with their team in the company and put together a consortium of the county and give us all a pretty good deal. So what ended up working out for us, we're still in the works of kind of putting it together, but we're going to be able to probably put together a county-wide, mostly probably southern New Hampshire. I know Rockingham County's on the other side looking at it, a software that we all can use. That will probably end up saving us a few bucks in the initial part of the first couple of years, and then plan out a few years after that. But the initial tax impact of $750,000 to $1 million in 2027 is not there. We have worked it out now where all of us in the county as chiefs have sat together, worked with this vendor, have looked at some numbers. We're in the process of it. It's not quite there yet for the board, but I think it's going to be a really good deal for us. And it's going to be quick for us in the sense that the software's already there. It's going to be county-wide. It's going to be southern statewide, where we're all connected, which is even better, so we can share data if we need it. I think it's going to be really beneficial for us. And my other part of this presentation, sorry, I don't mean to keep, I talk a lot, but my concern initially with this whole software situation is, I really, as a police chief, but also as a resident, I worry about spending $1 million of taxpayer money on software that we know computer software changes every 3, 4, 5 years. And with AI coming and technology changing so quickly, this company is offering us a software that is not necessarily $1 million up front, and there's no signed contract for 10, 15 years of life. So I've worked through with my team and the IT team. We kind of agreed that it might be beneficial, advantageous for us to look at this for a 3 to 5 year, and then kind of see where we're at from there, rather than spending $1 million and then in 5 years telling the same committee that we're going to need some AI-driven, software that's going to do everything for another $1 million. So that's where I'm at with that. I think it was, in my opinion, it was something that it was advantageous for us to do and knock that right off the CIP matrix altogether.
Good, thank you.
Do you have an estimate at all of what the cost will be? A little bit?
I do. I don't know if I'm prepared to say it right here,
Yeah.
Olivia. I can tell you that the first 3 years are going to be the same exact price that we pay now.
Okay.
So we are paying roughly, don't quote me the exact number, $31-ish, $32,000 a year for our service package. That company is giving us in writing that they will provide that same price for the next 3 years.
Okay.
So for me, that just made sense to say, well, we're not gonna see an increase substantially like that. I'm sure there'll be a few things here and there, but
Like,
for me,
that's
it
a
was like,
lot
that's
less than
3
$1 million.
years, right, you know? And then see where AI brings us into this whole new software thing, so.
Does the company take care of transferring the data from the old system to the new system for you?
Yeah, so that was one of the biggest kickers for all of us in the county. They were, that's usually the biggest cost, is the data conversion. They were willing to put together a package for the entire county for free.
Wow.
I think they're looking for the
I'm
long
gonna take you to
term.
buy a car next time I go.
What's that? Yeah, right. I didn't, this is the work of other people that are very brilliant. I just, but I think to your point, this company is looking to continue its service in the Northeast, and there's a couple different vendors that are really pushing into the Northeast, and of course, they want to stay here, so they're going to offer, I think long-term, they're looking to kind of keep customers for the longer term, as we all think, we know it's more beneficial to stay long-term than it is just the initial, so. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Good.
So, those are like I said, the wins, I guess, for us, and for the taxpayer of Goffstown.
Okay.
So I can start with
You can start,
vehicles.
you said either way.
We can do the vehicles if you'd like. So I'll go on my long drawn-out explanation of the cruisers for members who are not up to speed. Typically for us, we ask every 3 years for new cruisers, as we have been for probably the past 20-25 years. We have a fleet of just about 15 police interceptor cars, 10 of which are your cars that you see every day that have all the markings and blue lights on top, 5 of which are unmarked that are for staff and admin and detectives. We have a pickup truck that is marked, that is more of our utility slash if we need to transport bigger items, and we have a crime scene slash command post that we use, and to just kind of help people understand. I know there were some questions during voting, what the big truck is, why do we have it, why is it always out front, what is it used for, how much money does it cost? The truck is paid for. We use it for incident command when we have massive incidences. We use it for massive incidences at St. A's when we have huge political debates that are nationwide. That is our command post that we sit with Secret Service and all of our federal partners. We also use it for crime scenes, so when we do have homicides, shootings, people that try to blow their houses up or other situations of that nature, we bring that in to then see some of the evidence and put that stuff, bring it over to our building after. Gives us a spot where we can cool off when it's hot, get in the shelter when it's raining, or just, we don't do many parades in Goffstown anymore, but we could use it for a parade, we'll be able to. We don't offer too many free rides in that, but if you'd like to check it out, we can show you that. But when you see it at voting, the majority of the time, that is out front there. It is a place for some of our officers that have been out there all day to kind of get off their feet for a couple minutes. We also have a, if we have like the bigger presidential races, we use that as an instant command. So there are people manning it. So that's kind of the idea of what the bigger command post is. I know a lot of people had some questions this last year on it. So for my presentation tonight for us, again, I'm going to ask for 3 cars. I decided not to ask the town again for a Tahoe. I feel like the history of this is becoming a little bit, every year I ask for it, and then every year we sit in budget committee, and then budget committee decides that they want to save the extra 20 grand, so they cut it and give me the 3rd police interceptor. So I've just decided at this point we'll just stick with the police interceptors, call it a day. It seems like the newer ones that are coming off the line seem like they're a little bit more reliable right now than the COVID cars, so we'll stick with it and we'll kind of go. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to ask for the 3 police interceptor cruisers this year.
Will you explain to the people who haven't been on this board your COVID car reference?
The COVID cars are the ones that came from 2020 to 2021, 2022. Have a conspiracy that during that time people were not building vehicles pretty well. They were overcharging, and we got some pretty bad vehicles that constantly had problems. We had a ton of recalls. We had a bunch of things go wrong quickly with them. some of those cars, even though they were 2021s, are no longer in our fleet because we've gotten rid of them and sold them because they become too much of a problem children for us. So when I call them COVID cars, those are the ones that,
We've heard that from police departments in the towns we represent too, you're not alone in that.
yeah. And I guess for the people who don't know how we run it, typically how we've historically done it is our 10 line cars are usually online for 3 years, depending on mileage, wear and tear, hours. We then typically change them over to 3 years of the unmarked detectives cars or admin staff cars for about 3 years, and then depending again on mileage, wear and tear, and how grumpy they are, we then put them over to DPW for them to either use for whatever they need, Parks and Rec, Town Hall. We recycle them through the whole entire community. Typically, we're seeing on average one of our cruisers going the life of about 9 to 10 years in the town, and then DPW will put them on municipal bid and auction, and they will sell them. We're averaging about $2,500 to $3,000 from what Adam tells me on return on that. So that is kind of the cycle of what we do. So when I present to you guys tonight, that three will replace probably the oldest ones depending on the situation in the fleet. We will put those 3 cars on the line as the new police frontline cars that are officers that you see every day out there in patrol. That'll be their office for 12 hours a day. And then we'll take 3 off the fleet, go to detectives, and kind of go down that way. And for the people who are new, typically our cars are getting somewhere, we're getting rid of them in the average of between like 80,000 to 100,000 miles, which doesn't seem like a lot to the average person, but the cars are driven a little bit differently than the average car. They have high hours because they idle a lot. The hours themselves are typically in the 2000s of hours, but Ford has that kind of that matrix or the calculation that for every engine hour that is on that car, it's equivalent to 33 driving or driven miles. So if you have a car that is roughly 100,000 miles plus 2,000 hours on it, I went to Goffstown High School, so I don't have really good math, but it's a lot of miles. No offense to my teachers at Goffstown. But yeah, so you can tell that those cars, when you look at the mileage with the hours, it tends to be up there. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of how we work our cruisers. Just to remind everybody, these are our officers' offices. They typically run them 12 hours a day for that one shift, and then the next shift comes in, and they'll share that same car. So for one 24-hour cycle, one car is running, and then typically when the new shift comes in the next day, this car will typically stay back at the station, kind of gets a rest for the day, and the other car will go out for 24 hours. So that's how we tend to split the fleet in half, so they're not running 24 hours a day, 365 days. They typically get some break in between. Now, there is a caveat to that. Some of these cars that are on break go to details. They go to the SROs, our 2 SROs take different cars to the schools. So you will see that type, or if we have another overtime shift or something of that nature. But for the most part, when we're doing it the way we typically do, it's one car. The cars that are on shift run for 24 hours straight, and they kind of sit for a day, and then the other car. So that way we try to keep the engine hours down and the mileage down.
Okay. Any questions on vehicles? Okay. Thank you.
Good on the vehicles?
Yep.
Okay.
Short list.
Yes.
Then it's just to repeat what you said, there's nothing new in what you proposed on the vehicles. This is a continuation of
Nope.
the vehicle replacement.
The
schedule.
only thing that is changing, well, yes, the only thing that's changing is we're going from I'm not asking for the titles.
Yeah.
And the prices. Right now, what we're seeing, we just bought this year for those cars that we approved in default. The car itself is $43,330. That is what we got a price for 2026. I'm assuming we're probably gonna see the same couple thousand next year, you know, price increase, 45,000-ish. We just don't have that number now, we don't see it till October. And on average, we're seeing our outfitting, that's the lights, the cages, everything else that we do, plus all the equipment that we need to add to it. With the striping, we see that anywhere between 15 to 20,000. A supervisor's car is a little bit different because we use a different light bar, so that's usually cheaper. If we can recycle some of that equipment, we do, which typically will save some money on the back end, but we can never ask and budget for that because we've been kind of in a pickle sometimes when we budget thinking we're gonna use and recycle, so we don't budget for the new equipment, and then Ford changes the vehicle's dimensions and nothing fits.
And
So what we've.
that's entirely random
Of
and
course,
not
yeah.
conspiratorial.
Yeah, right, it's not for them to continue to work with other vendors to, you know, make things happen. It's kind of like the iPhone with the light, never mind. Anyways, so what we typically do is we budget for everything to be brand new. If we can recycle, we will. Anything that we usually typically save over goes back at the end. We don't we just send it back to the general fund. We've been historically, at least in my chiefhood in 6 years here, we've been pretty on target, if not underneath. So our numbers are pretty accurate, unless we've had, I think during 2021 and 2022, it went from $29,000 for a cruiser to like 35. That like just because everybody's cars were going up. So that's kind of the cruiser vehicle explanation. Questions, concerns on that?
Derek, point out where we're going to be on the matrix when we get to the other stuff.
So you're on the bottom of page 1.
Everybody good with that?
Okay, so my locker room expansion, that's been on this CIP on and off for at least 15 years. Again, I keep putting it on the matrix, pushing it back, because I don't want to spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo our locker room renovation for our men's and women's locker room. If someday, which I'll get to the third page, we can start breaking ground and build a new police department. I just think it's foolish for our taxpayer to put money into the building we're in now, and then hopefully in 3 years we build a new one. I'm joking. Maybe in 10 years or 5 years we can start building a new one and have a brand new facility with locker rooms. But as I said for many years now, it is our home. It's where we work. It's where some of our officers live more than they live at home, and that's their locker room. That's where they go in, they start their shifts, they end their shifts, they take showers there, and it is very dated and it's getting pretty small. So we've always had this plan, my predecessor had it, we've worked through it, I just keep pushing it off. But essentially what it is, it's a full renovation of our men's and women's locker room to make it bigger, more accessible. I know most of you know this, but several years ago we ran into a situation where we have a pretty good complement of women officers now. Our locker room at the time was only serving about maybe 1 to 2 female officers, and we had 4 at one time on the shift, and they had to wait out in the hallway until they could get into to their locker. We were able to put together some money and do a temporary fix. We took about 100 square foot of space and created a bigger space for the women. We now have more than that. We have a lot of female officers. We have a lot of working moms that need places to go for when they're nursing. So we've kind of worked through that with them. It's not ideal, but it works. So this project will help us kind of have a bigger area and a more functional area for our officers. Again, I'll tell everybody our lockers in there I think are from the 70s from the high school. They are still there. I've been here 20 years and my locker has still been the same locker for 20 years, right?
You clean it?
No. But essentially, this is where I have this, I just have this feeling of like, we need to get this done, but at the same time, I keep kicking it down the road because we're going to spend a lot of money, and every year it's probably going to cost more to do this. But I'm really hopeful that this community will see that instead of spending $250,000 to $300,000 in a locker room, we can use that money towards building a brand new facility for our community that will last another 30 years.
In past years, you've talked about the short-term retention issue. You're making it attractive for your officers, that's a playoff
Yeah.
over long-term gains.
Some of my conversation, my comments have been to this committee and to the community is, we have a lot of younger officers who come to work. A lot of them come from schools that have nice facilities, modern facilities. Then they come to the Goffstown Police Department and they walk into a 1984 locker room with 1978 lockers and kind of go with, brown wooden doors. But I will tell you, there's a lot of humility in my building. Our officers, they have good cars. They work. They drive in. So I think that's good. But it's our home. It is what it is. They deal with it. I don't hear a lot of complaining about it. But I think for me, as the chief and as the representative of our agency and as a community member, it would be nice to give them a little bit more of a modern place that they can come in the morning, put their stuff away, and change and get ready for work.
I guess the question for us as our committee is, you're showing the police station 2029, whether that's realistic or not is a question politically and financially, and how much you defer other needed upgrades
Yeah.
in anticipation of it happening then rather than sometime down the road. And of you that have managed facilities, have been on boards, that's a constant question. In Concord, we were going to get a new Y. I was on the board, so we put off needed upgrades, then decided in the end we couldn't afford the new Y, so then we were behind the ball on the needed upgrades. So I don't want us to be there with the police department if we have some question, but there's no clear answer. Yeah.
On there's a note that a feasibility study was approved.
That would be my presentation for the actual building itself, but if you'd like me to address it, I can, if you want to wait.
Whatever order floats your boat, just curious.
So, essentially the locker room just, I can get into the building because it's all kind of the same, but
Yeah.
we did put together, we worked with an architect, the board, that came out of impact fees. We put together a presentation to the board about what we need as an agency. What does Goffstown Police look like? As you know, or I'll say, maybe you don't know, our building was looked at, started 1983, 84-ish. It was built in 1987. At the time, they had 19 full-time employees. Now we're roughly 48-ish employees. So the building itself is very antiquated, but what they did was they basically came in and said, this is what the next 30 years of what a police department needs to be. They also put together what the projection of the community looks like. How does that affect us for public safety? They also want to make sure the building is built to the current standard of seismic, wind, tornado, snow, everything else that it should be as an emergency operations center or a backup one. So when they put this package together, they presented to the board. The big problem was is it a single story? Is it a double story based on land? Land has always been the problem in this community for us right now. We went back and forth with the county and next door to us. That's a whole other conversation. We've looked for land. We have a couple spots that we have looked at. We've presented to the board about the land that the town owns behind DPW. That didn't seem to be feasible for the board, as it was going to be another $2.5 million to put a road, electrical, water, everything. So we kind of said that might not be the best fit. The board is still owed a presentation for a spot that they looked at in town that's on Mass Road. But essentially, what they came up with was we would need somewhere around a 30,000 square foot building that could house a modern police department for the next 20 years that has growth for our community to keep it as safe as it is. It also was looking at a price tag of current 2026 current pricing, $35 million. Not to get in too much of it, but we cannot build up on our building as when it was built 1987 on a $500-ish thousand budget that did not impact the taxpayers, and essentially directly they built it with residential grade equipment and lumber and stuff, so they did not design it to be moving up.
So
We
2
talked-
stories, you'd have to knock it over.
Yeah, we talked about extending it out to the town, or to the boundary line there. There's a lot of different thoughts on that. I'm not an engineer or an architect, but I let them speak for that. They felt that that was not the right approach. It would cost more money to retrofit than it would to just build a new building. If you knock our current building down to then build a new building there, you're now taking the entire operation, jail facility-ish, temporary holding facilities, all of that processing area, evidence, everything, and you're putting it off-site somewhere in town in trailers at a tune of $2.5 million just for the trailers, just for off-site, for then us to move back into a newer facility. So their thought was, if you are going to do that, add another $2.5 to $3 million on temporary facilities, which is not a really good thing for a police department to do. So the idea for them, they presented, was to find a spot, have the board agree to it, and then potentially start working on talking to the community about building a new facility for us to just move over to that. And then we work on what do we do with the old facility. So that's where kind of the 30,000 foot, 40,000 foot kind of overview of where we're at with this building right here.
Was there a value study done on the current property to see what it might net if we sold it after?
I did not see that. I don't believe we have that. The conversation we did have with the previous board was, what do we do with it? Can it work for some part of our community now? Could it be Parks and Recs? Could it be a storage facility? It isn't. It is a.
us to be a there?
I did not. I'm saying what someone else told me, right?
It's useless.
You know, could it be?
Put that in the unit.
Rick, you be quiet until we call in, please.
Could it be used for, you know, other facilities for the community? Could it be a community room? I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
That would have to be something for the voters and the community. But that was a conversation, like, what do we do with the building after we're done with it, right? There was several things that several different people throughout the universe of what it potentially could be. Nothing is solidified.
We don't need to get into too much of the weeds, but what do you have as a plan going forward now? Is this something you're going to be working on over?
Yeah, so we currently, the needs assessment was done and delivered to the board. They see that. Basically, where we're at right now is the board is owed from the architect one more presentation on a plot of land in the community that they can share if this facility can fit there and work for our operation. And if it is, they can purchase it, and then we can start to work towards building there. And we are currently, the board has directed me to start an ad hoc committee to have members of our community and the department heads to sit and come up with some goals. We put that together for the board. And basically, we're going to sit with this ad hoc committee, figure out what the best approach is for this building, and then from there deliver a report to the board and then see where they're going to go. I would say that puts us probably close to 2020, mid 27, with the thought of potentially talking to the board, and I guess I'll say it, but talking to the board about putting something out there for 2028 to at least start the process. I mean, I have it in here for 2029 as a placeholder, but again, from some of my predecessors who are still around that built our building we're in, they started talking about this in like 82, 83, and then it was finally, you know, drawn up and built in 87. So it's gonna take couple of years, but that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. But with your, I don't want to prolong this, but with your procedure you just described, it's 2029 is a realistic date, you think, to have a proposal?
Yeah, and if for some reason we were ready earlier, I
You
think
could move
the
it forward.
history, we'd either move it forward, but the history has been a bond, has a very hard time.
You gotta take a couple of runs at it.
Yeah.
That was the kind of the thought process was, if we can get the ad hoc committee to give a good report, that community members and department heads can kind of present to the community where we're at, and then really just start talking to the community and telling this is what we need, right? Ultimately, the taxpayers are the ones that give us the say. And again, if we work on bond numbers, it's depending on where we're at in the world and where the bond numbers are at is really what drives it. Too bad we didn't get it back in 2020 when numbers were 2.5%. But really from there, it's then putting the numbers together and then just talking to the community, letting them know.
Okay.
And again, if it goes on the warrant article to kind of see where it fails, or I don't think it would pass it, but if it fails, and then kind of going back and talking about, but that's the hope. That's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Any questions?
Sorry, one last question. How big is the current facility?
I think it's 15,000 square feet-ish.
Okay.
I always use a lot of ishes, Dan.
That's okay. Anybody else? Eric, do you have anything else? I don't see it.
As of right now, that's where we're at.
Okay. That's a pretty good summary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay, guys, you've waited very patiently, unlike the gentleman to your right, who was very impatient and rude, but those are the shorts, I guess.
Good evening. My name is Ben Selleck. I'm the fire chief for the Goffstown Fire Department. Tonight I have Captain Derek Chenard, who is the training and fleet manager for the fire department. So,
Okay. Will you spell your last name?
CHOUINARD.
so he manages the fleet on an operational level for me. Since, as you already pointed out, we have a lot to talk about with apparatus in this. So if you have any apparatus-specific questions, I decided to bring my subject matter expert with me tonight.
Thank you. Derek, tell us where we're going to be.
You are on page 2.
So I did provide the handout. Doesn't look like you guys are working off that, so it's just off.
It's in, yeah, you do have a handout in your packet.
So yes, starts there with the red.
What does it look like?
It'd be behind the fire tab. It's got, so if you look at your tabs.
So I know this is only the second time I've been in front of you. So I try to listen and put information in front of you based off everybody's questions, and then just talk about the ones that you want to talk about. But that way you have references. So in that packet, you're going to have a significant amount of detailed information, which starts right off with our matrix. So just to remind everybody, we have the capital improvement plan, which actually includes all of our apparatus, as well as a couple other items. And then the larger apparatus, specifically the fire suppression units, are covered under the fire department capital reserve fund. So that we ask for taxation every year to do a support for the capital reserve fund, and we'll be talking about that tonight as far as the amount in that and why, and then we don't have to spike the budget when we have to purchase a vehicle. Just to remind you, the current build time for a fire engine is about 4 years, and for an aerial is about 5 years, and for an ambulance is about 3 years. So from our presentation from last year, we notified you of that change, that the years are still the same right now. You'll also note that we did not change our matrix because of that. That automatically means that means we are now pushing all of our apparatus back 2 to 3 years. So we're holding on to them automatically longer in the hopes that it gets back to fire engine coming in 18 to 24 months. But if it doesn't change, that means on these replacement dates, we're automatically keeping an engine for 2 or 3 more years automatically. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, so the replacement date you're shown is before you add that.
So
delay
is
in.
the approval date.
Okay.
Is when the town approves it. When we actually get it in, depending upon the apparatus, like I said, the ambulance, it's gonna be 2 years, engines 3 to 4, and aerial 5 years. So the matrix that you have first there shows you all of our fleet. It shows you the current age there on the right, the expected life. The expected life is there, we try to look at probability. So when we're looking at probability, these apparatus are significant in cost. The engines, those are over $1 million a piece now. The aerials are over $2 million a piece now. I hoped I would never see something like that, but that is what it is. And the expected life is built off of the probability of large-scale fixes. So when I start saying large-scale fixes, when we start spending 5 figures to repair apparatus like we did on the tower last year, one of our engines is going to be pretty close to that right now. It's been out of service. And because to keep you guys, I know there's got a couple new people, is we always try on our purchasing to do state bid for local stuff, but because fire trucks, not as many are bought like regular pickup trucks and stuff like that, instead the town of Goffstown actually goes to a national buying power. So we utilize, instead of New Hampshire state bid for our fire trucks, we utilize a national bidding system, like HGAC buy, Sourcewell, or something like that, depending upon our needs at that time. So we still do a competitive bid process. Also reminding you, this year we did something a little different with our engine, is we tried to get the biggest bang for our buck. So this year what we did was we looked at not only, sometimes you get pre-buy discounts. We did the math on that and compared that with the interest rates that we're getting on a regular basis from our capital reserve fund as a savings. And I think we're, Derek, at just over 4% right now.
Yep.
So what we did was we actually found out mathematically that it's better for us to not do the pre-buy and actually do a delayed payment. And luckily we have a very good experience with our current manufacturer for apparatus. It's been holding up, as well as they actually let us do the best of both worlds with this last one, is we're doing a delayed payment. So we're saving money and building interest in that, as well as we're doing a prepayment discount. So they actually, it wasn't quite as much as it would have been, but we're actually getting the best of both worlds there, which I want to say saved us, I'd have to look at it again, roughly about $80,000 in that 1 year difference from doing that. So had to educate some people in the strategy involved in that.
I want to say goodnight to the other gentlemen.
The other thing is that it also helped us out with, very happy to report that we actually have been awarded $250,000 grant for that engine, which allowed, because of how we handled it, it allowed us to get that. So the one thing I will tell you is our experience here at Goffstown Fire, we are not relying on the grants. We have the Work Invest New Hampshire program is a perfect example of that. We had a state signed MOU that we would be reimbursed. The money was there. We went for reimbursement, said, sorry, the state politicians decided to take the money and use it for something else. Sorry.
When was that?
Last year? Yep.
Thank you.
So it's, and then the other thing is, sometimes you can get federal grants for apparatus and equipment, or for staffing, like we've done in the past. The town of Plymouth was the only one to receive one last year. They put it before the voters to say, hey, we have this cost share. At that point, it was an 80-20, I believe it was. So the town voted yes for that. They received the grant, and now it's a 50-50. So they had to go back to the town. So it's, right now, the volatility of grants, we're going for them. So that's when I say that we received the $250,000. We can't get that until we dispose of the engine. So the funds are actually coming from the Volkswagen settlement for the diesel, for the clean diesel. So because of the build time, we didn't go with a fully customized truck. We went with a template truck, what's the name of it? Build My Pierce or something like
Yeah.
that. So a template style truck. So that way we could actually get it in under the wire for that grant, where literally we have a month gap on this. So not only could the money disappear because someone decides to use it for something else, if something gets messed up and it goes beyond that, we won't be eligible for that too. So we'll talk a little bit more about the CRF and how that handles there. But there's the matrix, so you can see what we're planning for based off the current life expectancy, based off costs, and based off of out of service time, because these apparatus are not, you can't take them to your local mechanic. For example, the closest location we have to work on this is Methuen, and that's actually really, for other manufacturers, that's actually really close. Some of them have to bring down to Rhode Island and stuff like that, because obviously they're specialty pieces. So the other thing on that same page that I did for you was I broke out, so like I said, we have a 20-year CIP plan. I know we're only looking at the 6 years, but everything there is what you have detailed on in the following pages based on the template that you asked for. But I did fill out template sheets for everything for the next 20 years. So in 2027, you'll see we have a CRF deposit. We have those every single year. I'll talk about that in a second. The fire rescue boat, that's not over the amount, so we don't include that in the CIP. That comes out of operation budget. That doesn't come out of CRF. It's just part of our CIP. So getting back to the CRF deposit, if we're good with that. So I do have updated graphs to show you.
Everybody understand when he talks about CRF deposit, Derek, give us a quick reminder.
So our capital reserve fund, the fire apparatus capital reserve fund, the agents to expend from it are the select board. That was approved by voters at a previous meeting. But to deposit into it, that can only be done as a special or separate? Special, separate warrant article at town meeting.
Yeah, so it's a way to set aside funds.
Took it a second.
Yes, it operates much like a savings account would be for capital expenditures.
So I'm sending around 2 pages. I did that strategically, timing-wise. So what you're looking at here is the 3rd page, and you can compare it with what you have in your packet already. Is last year, our CRF deposit was $350,000. We're asking to go increase that from $350 to $450, and the reason why is in front of you. So what we're talking about is, can we actually afford our plans moving forward? So in 2030, we have the aerial, 2032, we have the tanker. In order to be able to have enough money in that, we would need to go up to $450 per year. As you see, long-term, something else will have to change as we go. It's not solvent, as you can see there. The black line there, you have a key on the bottom, is $450. The blue is $400, and the purple is what we currently have at $350. So that is the reason why we're asking to go from $350 to $450, which I do understand the significant increase there. The second page that I gave you includes the additional deposit of $250,000 based off the grant. So again, we only get that money when we dispose of the truck. And when I mean dispose of the truck, the terms and conditions of the grant require us to drill the block and cut the frame. So that's part of the terms and conditions. So we have to completely dispose of that unit in order to get those funds. And someone from DES actually comes down and physically watches the junkyard do that.
So it's cash for clunkers for fire trucks?
Yes, yep. So that's the terms and conditions for that. So because of that, you'll see I deposited, the other thing is that does not automatically go into the capital reserve fund because it's a grant, so it's revenue, comes in as revenue. Derek can speak to it more, but the board has to approve it, that money to move from there over to CRF, and if he wants to talk about that more, he can.
Yeah, so we accepted those as unanticipated funds under 3195B, but that comes into the general fund when we finally do receive those, and then again, the only way you can get funds into a capital reserve fund is at town meeting. So it would lapse into fund balance, and then likely that very next March, we would ask the voters to take that $250,000 from the grant, put it from fund balance into.
So when you're comparing the two, the 250, and it's kind of ironic that their grant was for 250 because we actually had, when we, instead of taking the capital reserve fund deposit from unreserved fund balance, when we asked to take it from taxation, it failed. That was for $250,000. So this will actually get us back to where we should have been. As you can see there, it still does not make us solvent for the purchase in 2032, but I'm hoping to find more grants, more things to do that we can get up there. And obviously between now and then, we've got a couple of years to try to pull something out of
So
the
just walk us through, these are the chart,
Yes.
just to show us, explain to us, you know, the colors and what we're looking at.
Yes, so the green bars are your deposits. The red bars are the expenses, so as you can see there, that will match up with your matrix on the top. That will show you how, so if we're removing or earmarking, for example, 2026, we earmarked basically that $1.1 million for that engine purchase, even though it's being purchased, we have that delayed purchase. It's at 10-month mark, we actually, the funds actually leave our account. So we're building interest there, but, so those are the costs there. One of the other things that the captain has, I will give him props on, has been doing a very good job. You'll see in 2029, we're planning to replace the forestry unit. We actually may be able to push that back, which will also help this out, and that's because of the work that he's been doing on that, changing out a lot of the components so that we can actually hopefully extend the life of that unit. And we're also keeping call volume down on that and keeping it very similar to the aerial unit, is we're trying to response-wise use these only as absolutely necessary. And then the other command staff captain, Tim Lavoy, has been working on decreasing our call volume specifically related to master box programs. And that's typically where they would use the forestry, is to go out and take a box offline or put it back online. So that unit is running less now, which obviously the wear and tear decreases, life expectancy increases. So we're trying to do that across all of our fleet to make it as easily as possibly can for the taxpayers. So that is a really important thing. So there's the green and red bars. And then the, like we said, if we stick with the $350,000 deposits, then that's your purple line, which is on the bottom. So as you can see, we will not be able to purchase the aerial in 2030. And even if we do the blue line there, we won't be able to purchase that. If we do 400, we'd have to get up to the 450 per year, every single year, in order to replace that aerial. One of the other things that I will just remind everyone of, as far as we do have life expectancy, and then we also have some standards and requirements that we are up against. We have the NFPA standard, which means a fire engine is supposed to only be in a first due capability for a maximum of 15 years, and then 20 years, and then depending upon it, max replacement years. As soon as we hit 20 years, we can't get the pumps certified. That becomes a significant problem. We really shouldn't have it on the road. And then the other thing is that although while we look at these apparatus, not only to get our personnel to the scene, these pumps are what keep our people alive when they're in the fires. So if you have a bunch of firefighters working on a fire engine and that pump is not certified every year, you're probably going to have some issues there with your personnel. So that is extremely important. So the other thing that I will give props to Danielle with is we got hit on the town end with an insurance change, but currently, and they wanted to reduce this, 15-year max for replacement coverage. So if we total one of these $1 million fire engines, if it's more than 15 years, they will not give us full replacement cost. And they tried to reduce that this year. I forget what the number was, but.
I think it was always historically 20 years.
Yes.
And last year, they dropped it down to 15 without a lot of warning. And Danielle worked with Primex, and now it's back up to 20 years.
So our fleet is still covered for replacement, which obviously if we have a 18-year truck right now and it gets totaled and we have to replace it, that would be a gigantic burden that the town just, I don't know how we would manage that. So I greatly appreciate Danielle's very strong wording to them and making that be corrected, because that'll.
Just a question, you
Yeah.
you mentioned if they're over 20 years, you can't certify the pumps. Does
Yep.
that mean engine 3
Yep.
is not certified?
So engine 3 right now is a 2005. So that has been refurbed, so we're good with that. So that gives us the maximum of 25 years.
Thank you.
Yep, great question. Sorry, I missed that. So, yes, so we can extend them up to 25 years, which, as you see in the life expectancy here, we're looking at replacing 22, 22, 25. So we're over 20 on all of our plans. For the engines, just so, we have Station 1 here downtown, we have Station 2 in Bernardville. So you have Engine 1 at Station 1, you have Engine 2 at Station 2. When that new engine comes in, it's going to replace the oldest one of those two, and then that engine, so for example, it's Engine 1, the new engine becomes new Engine 1, the Engine 1 becomes the reserve Engine 3. Just so you guys are clear on that, is although the new engine becomes Engine 1, we're still replacing the 2005 fire engine. I know there's been some confusing with that. We do the exact same thing with the ambulances too. It just makes it a lot easier for us to use our run cards and a little bit more firefighter resistant as well. So, any questions on the matrix or the diagram there? And go further down. So what I did for that handout was I did that chronologically. So in 2020.
David has a question.
Yeah.
Just on the matrix you provided, is there significance to the color coding of the years for the red, gray, and blue?
No.
Okay.
No. Just tried to make it somewhat offsetting.
Except for the blue are all from the ambulance fund.
For the.
Under vehicle matrix.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're looking at the other one. I'm sorry, I was looking at the graph, my apologies.
Sorry.
So the color coding, yeah, so let's go to, yes, so, yes. So on that one there, you're gonna see over on the left, and this really helped out me to understand how Goffstown did things. So look over on the far left. There you're gonna have the, where the money comes from for those apparatus, okay? So what we're talking about with the CRF, that covers funds for Engine 1, 2, and 3, Tanker 1, Tower 1, and Forestry 1. You'll, I know there's a couple experienced people on the board, so you'll notice that Forestry 1, unfortunately, the cost replacement now puts it in your wheelhouse. So whereas it was not before, sorry, now you got to deal with another apparatus with us. So that is now in there. If you looked at the exact same thing that I provided you last year, you will see the forestry actually in the annual fire budget. So that comes out of our regular annual operations line. So that could spike the budget. So we really worry about that type of stuff too. And then underneath that, like Derek was referring to, is the annual EMS budget. All of our ambulances and ambulance equipment comes out of revenue, the revolving fund from revenue from ambulance billing. So that taxes do not pay for that. No.
That covers all the ambulance replacement?
Right now it does. Hopefully the state of New Hampshire doesn't mess with ambulance rates too much. They're currently in a study phase. And if there is huge shifts on the ambulance billing at the state level, then that could potentially change.
Yep. I cross my fingers a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. So as far as the colors go, I just tried to make it easy for everybody looking at this. Is the red on the top there? So you have the fire suppression apparatus. The gray are the command vehicles, the admin vehicles. Car 1, that was a change that I did make operationally this year. Is that was not previously lettered and stuff like that, but I believe a lot in transparency, so we lettered that up so other people knew where I was, but could also easily identify it. And quite honestly, for me, made it a lot safer for me rolling into calls. So they actually knew, because I did get yelled at one time by a resident, why are you in my driveway? Oh, wait, you're the chief. Okay, yep, thanks. So we try to stay away from that issue as much as possible. So those are the 4 vehicles that we have there. And then you see the UTV, the boat, and then the 2 boats that we have, and then the 3 ambulances. I just color-coded the 3 ambulances blue for medical. Perfect question. Great. Anything else before we roll into them? So I did everything chronologically for you based off of that second chart there. So 2027, we're requesting $450,000. For that, there's additional detail there. I know a lot of people have been through this multiple times, so they do not want me to go through line by line, but all of the information is there for you. So 2027, we have that, as well as the fire boat, but again, the fire boat is a low-cost item compared to the fire suppression. That was pushed off from last year, so we're hopefully going to be able to include that in 2027 operations. Then we move on to 2028, if everybody's good with 27. Okay?
Yep.
So we start off again with that $450,000 deposit. Then we have a new one in there. We're requesting $45,000 for Station 2 critical system and life extension evaluation. I've only been here in town as deputy chief previously for 2 years and took over as chief this past winter. Before that, I was with another department. I've got 24 years in the fire service here in New Hampshire, but I've lived here in town since 2006, and I've tried to help out the community the entire time I've lived here. And I was on the building committee as a resident, and I was privy to the multiple studies that the town has done in station improvements and stuff like that. My personal opinion is, while it would be great to replace Station 2, again, Station 2, for those who don't know, was designed to be a volunteer station and to be a function hall on the second floor. It was never intended to be 24-hour, 72 occupied for full-time firefighters. It was supposed to be replaced. It's kind of interesting looking at the old documents. The bones seem to be pretty good, but I am not an engineer. And also reading the town's temperature, as well as the other needs, as the police chief was here before me. I am not looking to replace that station. Instead, I think what we can do is very similar to what the CAP's been doing a very good job with forestry, is extend the life of it. So do some operational budget pieces for maintenance of it to replace critical items. So like this year, we're looking at replacing all the windows because they're 20 years old. The furnace, now I'm going to knock on your wood. It's still running. We found a leak last year, and the leak was because it was, it got so corroded, I forget what the drip valve is or whatever that is, was so corroded, it cracked off, but because the pipe was so corroded, it didn't leak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
So, I'm hoping that stays running. We do have significant electrical problems in that building because the electrical lines in there are so old. We also don't have three-phase power there. I wish Brian Ray was here because he likes to send me messages anytime we use a floor buffer or run a vent fan in there, because the IT infrastructure in there starts sending out danger messages to him. And he's now he knows, oh, were you guys washing the floor today? Yes. That's why we started to have brownouts. We literally have brownouts in the station because of that.
In your fondest dreams, what would be the solution?
I would love to have a new station, but I don't think it's a reality.
Well, I didn't ask reality. If it would take that down and replace it on site?
The location actually works really well for that population there in town for response time wise.
Yeah.
The difficulty response time wise is on the other side of the river, especially now that Henry Bridge is out, because that station covers the Medville community. And with Station 3 being out of service for a number of years now, we don't have anyone responding out of there. Obviously, response time to that entire northeast district is extremely slow. And I'm sure you've been around, you've seen the response time matrix and stuff like that, and how the location changes slightly. It doesn't build much, but that location for the Bernardville and that high population density is really important. It's always difficult. It's a balance of where do you put your resources, and you have to protect the most people that you can. And it sounds absolutely horrible, but you have a rural community up in the northeast section, and you have a very dense population in the Bernardville area. And when you look at that, unfortunately, that's why we decided to keep Station 2 instead of Station 3. Also, Station 2 has some critical infrastructure issues. The walls, the blocks are vertical instead of interlocked. So it was built by volunteers. I'm shocked that it lasted as long as it did, and we're going to run it until the tires fall off of it. We're using it as cold storage right now. So.
Did you ever do out a replacement cost on Station 2?
Yes, that was done. That was in the 2011. Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying, a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
I believe the town has actually done, I just looked at this not too long ago, because we were looking at Station 3. I want to say we've done a total of 7 station projects, or we funded 7 studies to look at buildings, because I had to read all through them to go to the board to say, hey, what do you want me to do with Station 3? Do I need to plan on replacing the roof and stuff, or not? So what we're looking at is, in that following year, is to request $45,000 to do a study to say, okay, what needs to change in that building? Obviously, the furnace, the electrical systems, and how can we do that step by step like we would if we bought an old house?
Keeping the existing structure.
Yep.
But in your ideal world, you would take it down and put up a new one?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And like remember before we had Station 1, before we redid Station 1, we were actually paying significant cost increases for all of our apparatus just so we would fit in the small bays. We were the first community in the state of New Hampshire to pay over $1 million for a fire apparatus. And we spent an extra $120,000 so it would fit in the station. So
is there a number for 2 is the Bernardville one?
yep, Station 2 is Bernardville. Yep.
And that's the one that's made out of sticks and glue?
Station 2, no, that's all brick. That's
That's a joke. So,
okay.
is there a cost associated, like, I understand the 45,000 will kind of try
For the
to
study.
help, yeah, but to replace it, like,
I would have to look at, I don't have that number right
don't
in
have
front of
that.
me,
Yeah.
but the town has done that. We would have to then do current cost estimates.
yeah.
I know, I can tell you in a 5-year period, 2 years ago, cost of engines went up by 20% in 5 years. So if you tack that onto a building, I'm sure it's going to be about the same right now.
Times 1.28.
Yeah, so basically what my plan would be is do the study, figure out what's the priority, like the electrical system, the heating. The other thing is, we don't have a cooling system in there. So we use like window AC units, not very cost effective for the electrical bill. And as well as it's also been wreaking havoc on the vinyl windows. So this year we started changing as we've needed to replace them. We've gone to the portable units that just have like a small little piece there. So as we need to change those out, that's what we're moving to, so that way when we do replace all the windows, hopefully they won't get as bad. Because this year I had to take one of the windows down to Granite State Glass and replace the glass in it, because we have 7 of them currently that will not stay up. So they were using books or bricks to keep them up, and one fell over in the wind, came down and shattered, so I had to get that replaced. So the board and I were just working on that Monday night to try to make some plans to see what we can do as far as replacing the windows there. It's difficult with a default budget and stuff like that, and not
Yeah,
being
no,
done.
fair.
So-
Well, this is similar to Eric's comment about locker room versus deferring that in hopes of you're doing a lot of fairly Band-Aid stuff. You have to do it. But when you finish, are you still ending up with a deficient building? Or are these investments?
Depends how you want to look at it. Is the investments that I'm looking at here, and that's why we want to do that study, is so the engineer can tell us, is this even feasible? Does it make sense? And then if it does make sense, here's the steps you can do it. So if you take $20,000 or $30,000 a year, can you replace the furnace 1 year and put a cooling system on the furnace? And then can you do electrical 1 year and spread that out so we don't spike it, so it's something that taxpayers can approve. And that's what I'm recommending, is just because of listening to the budget committee, especially, and what we're hearing around the community. I live here in town too, so it impacts me.
I know that I'm not mindful of the budgetary constraints,
Yep.
but as a CIP committee, we still have to look at what would be the better solution, and at least have it as a discussion item. And then the other committees can say, no, we don't want to do that, but then we've done our job. So I don't want to shy away from that, because we know there's some budgetary challenges, I'll call it.
And so that building was built in 1969. That's how old it is. And last year was an example, is because of budgetary issues, we kicked the can down the road. So that station was changed over to gas in
In the 2010s.
10s, yeah, sometime around there, right? That's when we changed over to gas instead of oil. So what was interesting when we went to pave it last year is, I said, is removing the oil tank, the underground oil tank out back, part of the project? And everyone looked at me like I had 2 heads. Okay, yes, there is one there. We forgot to take it out because there wasn't enough money when we went over to gas, and then it didn't get approved the following year, didn't get approved the following year, and then it just fell off the matrix. So we had to, this past year, we had to remove the oil tank, which, by the way, was also full,
Really?
and it was original.
Awesome, great shape then, right?
Wow. Single
Perfect shape.
Yeah.
Luckily, we found a company out of Ware who was actually willing to even touch it. There were a lot of companies that we contacted that wanted nothing to do with it, because they thought as soon as they tried to open the cover or something like that, it would cause a crack, or they would find a leak, and then it becomes this gigantic DS problem. So, very similar to, yes, absolutely, would the best option be to replace it and not have to worry about that? Yes, absolutely. Because could we go ahead and replace the furnace and then 2 years later find a structural deficiency and now we can no longer inhabit the building? Absolutely. But that's why I want to bring in the engineers.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
But if you want to give us a new building, that's absolutely fine.
I'll check my wallet.
They're open.
Okay. Also in 2028, we have the replacement of car 1, which again is below the requirement for CRF. So that is just in there, and that's just, we're planning to replace that in kind. We move on to 2029, an additional CRF deposit. Again, I think we've gone over the graph enough. You can see why I'm not asking to increase the 450 at this time, because I want to try to keep that as stable for the taxpayers as we possibly can. And even though we're not going to be solvent in 2032, I think we can find some savings or some additional grant or something to get us above for that 2032. I'm pretty confident with that. So fire apparatus for that. In 2029, we have the deposit, because we have the deposit every year. If you're fine with it, I'm just going to stop talking about the 450 deposit. Okay. 29, we have K1's replacement, so that is the fire prevention and community risk reduction officer's vehicle. If you see it driving around town, that's the red pickup with the cap on the back. So he does all of our public education when we can do it, as well as our fire investigation and that type of stuff. So then we move on to the forestry replacement. We still have that put in 2029. Hopefully over the next 2 years, we're going to find out if we can extend the life of that a little bit more, which will help us out a little bit. 2030, now we start to have some harder discussions. So that's when we replace the tower. If you have not watched it, I would highly recommend that you go to our website. We did put, because when I started here, there's some questions about why we have an aerial. And there were some discussions during a budget committee meeting that some incorrect information went out. And the person who said it, I give him major props. I called him up, he came into my office, we sat down, we went through everything, and he apologized. He said, I just had some bad information. So he said, hey, what's the best way for us to get the right information out? So we came up with a PowerPoint presentation, recorded it. So if you go to our website, there is a PowerPoint presentation on there that we're going to update as needed. It talks all about the different types of aerials, why Goffstown has an aerial, why we need an aerial, and just real quickly, it's because of how many 3-story buildings we have. The insurance requires it for all of those buildings 3 stories and higher, and there's a lot more information in there, but you can see that. The other reason that we have it is, I'm assuming none of you have ever had to rescue somebody out of a 2nd-story window. Try a 3rd-story window when the ladder's doing this, and then imagine that person being the elderly. So being able to pick that person off, and then if you didn't know, New Hampshire has a little bit of a gradient in it, so it's not like we can really put ground ladders up against every single window around a house, so that the aerial unit also allows us to extend over those areas that we cannot get a ground ladder to. And then one of the other big reasons why we have it is, especially down here downtown, if a fire gets into these 3rd floor or the attics or something like that, that's not something where we can actually reach a water stream to unless we have an elevated water stream, because if we don't have an aerial, we are going to lose a whole block. And if you don't believe me, it even happens in the city and other cities. We can pull up plenty of history on that. So 2030 is a tower replacement. Now, because we have a new station design, we're not limited. We can actually look at some other models, which actually may save us some money. So we'll talk about that, operational capability, finances, and stuff like that. But again, that's a discussion a few years down the road, which I'm fine putting off. Then we also have the UTV replacement. We're actually looking at possibly going to a different style, but we'll hit that when we get to it. You have another ambulance there in 2030, and then in 2031, you have car 3 replacement, which is the captain's pickup truck. So he does training, so that's why that one, if you see it running around town, unfortunately, we do have to secure all of our vehicles and secure our equipment in the vehicle, so it does have a tonneau cover on it. Like I said, he is in charge of training, so a lot of the training supplies he has to bring with him, then bring back. Obviously, stuff gets dirty, and then also when we have fires, it's nice to be able to put that stuff in there instead of exposing all of our personnel to stuff that has been through fires. Then you're going to see the bigger one there in 2031 as the SCBA's. That is when we are at our maximum life for using SCBA's.
Tell us what that is.
Yes. So SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, that is our air packs that we wear on our backs. That have a maximum shelf life allowable. Every 3 years, the NFPA updates their standards, so we are multiple standards out from that. We're starting to see a significant increase already in our maintenance line for SCBA's. They're just starting to break down a little bit more. Luckily, we've got a couple senior members that are really good with that type of stuff, and one of our lieutenants handles a lot of that type of stuff, but we do send that out. That is one we need to replace that. What I intend to do is, I don't know what grants are going to do. However, I have been very successful in the past in getting SCBA's covered by grants. That's not currently included in the CRF. It's going to be, my plan is to be a separate warrant article if we have to have that, but I'm hoping that I'll be successful in obtaining that fund through some sort of federal grant.
Are you not putting it under the CRF because you're already maxing that out with the vehicles?
Yeah. And
I think that was always presented as apparatus,
Right.
this is more of a equipment.
Equipment.
PPE.
and
So,
extrication.
although DRA has taken the position that it's up to the town to define those terms as they want, so.
I think it was always presented, so
Okay.
we do want to, and the last time the SCBA's were replaced, there was a significant grant to help
I
offset
may
that.
have helped out with that one, yes.
Yeah. No, my concern being warrant articles, if they don't get passed.
Yes.
and you
So
don't have
my
a plan B.
intention is to apply, so for the tower, my intention there is to apply for grants for the tower replacement for 2 years beforehand. Same thing with the SCBA's. So 3 strikes, you're out. Okay, we're gonna need the warrant article. The other thing with the, that kind of plan, I guess, that I'm a little worried about is both the tower and our SCBA's were actually purchased through a grant. So our possibilities of getting a grant to replace something that we got with a grant, yeah, so. And the other thing is with the tower, I'll remind you, the only reason we were approved for that is because the plan took 2 aerials out of service and replaced it with 1. So we used to have 3 operational stations, we're now down to 2. We used to have 2 aerials, now we're down to 1. That's why we were successful with the scoring for that, is because we took 2 aerials out and replaced it with 1. Otherwise, we would not have made the points. So I can keep going, just I don't know how many years out you want to go tonight.
Well, we don't, these look like mostly regular replacements.
Yeah, so that's why I stopped there after
Yeah.
the SCBA's.
Yeah, I think
Is
that's-
because we covered all the apparatus, you see the matrix there.
Yeah.
The big apparatus piece there is that aerial, 2 years later is the tanker. The real difference between the tanker and the fire engine is you're thinking about a single rear axle versus the tanker is a dual rear axle. So we carry we don't have hydrants, we only have hydrants 43% of the town. We do have those in rural areas like we already talked about, especially on the north end of town and then the very, very south end where we don't have hydrants, so we have to bring the water with us. So that is why we have that unit. So that the 2032 is when we're supposed to replace that. Any other questions?
We just churned through a lot of information. Group, do you have any questions on it? It's very well presented. I think I appreciate the charts, the graphs, because that visually.
There
shows
is,
it.
and that's what I tell, I try to listen to as many of the town meetings as I possibly can. And when questions come up about the fire department, I try to engage those people and, come in. I love answering questions because it tells me someone's invested in the community because they want to learn more. And it's surprising how much of a gap there is between the regular resident thinking who we are and what we do and what we actually do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of entertaining. So,
Can't wait for this year's board meeting.
Well, unfortunately, your toys are very expensive. So when you buy a new vehicle, it's huge.
it's huge,
Yeah.
yeah. So we do not take it lightly.
Using toys, not in the real
Yeah.
sense, but yeah, no. Police cars are cheap in comparison, so when we have
Yes.
to budget for you. it's
Very much so.
significant.
And that's, again, that's why we chose to extend the life of all of them because of that significant price increase. We're hoping it's gonna get back, but we hear what the voters are saying. So we're trying to keep it down, and we're going for every single grant we possibly can. And we were very lucky. I did not think we were gonna get the 250. The other one we got denied on, put in for another grant for it, but we did receive the 250, but I hope it's still there when we ask for it.
Okay, well, interesting. Okay, any other questions, Ms. Committee? Seeing none.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm available for any questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
that was a very good presentation. We appreciate the time you put into it. Okay, group, we have, the next meeting is on, thank you, gentlemen, on July 30th. You'll see Public Works, which is library and sewer. Sewer is easy because it's paid by the
Enterprise fund.
the enterprise fund. Library, we don't, typically doesn't have a lot, it's a single facility. Public Works will have interesting tours too, but it won't be as long a meeting. And then we'd like to do the deliberations on the 6th if we can. If we can't, we can schedule another meeting, that'll be the goal. So, thank you all for coming, I appreciate your attendance. There were CIP committees in the distant past that sometimes would lack a quorum. And in the last 5 years, 6 years, that hasn't happened. So I appreciate you showing up. Any other questions? If none, Davis, do you move to adjourn?
So moved.
Olivia, will you second it?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions carries. Thank you, we're adjourned.